The first thing I noticed was that the house next door had its lights on. That wouldn't have been strange if the house hadn't been empty for 6 months. The second thing I noticed was that someone was standing behind the upstairs curtain. I told myself it was a reflection. Then the figure lifted one hand and waved at me. I had lived in the same neighborhood for almost 8 years. It wasn't the kind of place where anything interesting happened. The houses were close together. Everyone knew everyone's routines. Kids played outside in the afternoon. Neighbors argued about parking. And every evening the same people walked their dogs along the same streets. It was ordinary. And that's exactly why what happened still bothers me. Because nothing about that night was supposed to be frightening. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I finished washing the dishes. I turned off the kitchen light and walked toward my bedroom. That's when I noticed something through the window. The house next door was glowing. Every window on the ground floor was lit. The porch light was on, and there was a light coming from the upstairs bedroom. I stopped. The house had been empty since the previous owner died. I knew because I had watched the place sit untouched for months. The grass had grown high. The mailbox was overflowing. Nobody had moved in, so I walked closer to the window. That's when I saw the curtain upstairs move. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then a dark shape appeared behind it. A person, standing perfectly still. I stared at it. The figure didn't move. Then slowly, it raised its hand and waved. I stepped away from the window. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I looked outside. The house was dark again. The grass was still overgrown. The mailbox was still full. I convinced myself that I had imagined everything, until I noticed something on my front porch, a small envelope. There was no name on it. Inside was a photograph. It showed my bedroom window, taken from inside the house next door. I immediately called the police. They searched the property. Nobody was there. The house was completely empty. No furniture, no electricity, no signs anyone had entered. The officer told me the photograph could have been old, but there was one problem. The photograph showed my bedroom exactly as it looked that night. My curtains, my lamp, even the shirt I'd left hanging over my chair. The officer asked if I'd taken the photograph myself. I said no. He looked at me for several seconds. Then he asked something that made my stomach drop. "Have you ever looked into the upstairs window of that house?" I said yes. "Why?" I told him about the person. He became quiet. Then he showed me another photograph. It was taken 6 months earlier. It showed the previous owner of the house standing upstairs, behind the same curtain. The officer told me the man had died inside that bedroom, alone. But that wasn't the worst part. The photograph had been taken from my bedroom window. For 3 weeks, I kept hearing someone walking around in the apartment above me. The strange part was, there was no apartment above me. I lived on the top floor. At first, I ignored it. Then one night, the footsteps stopped directly above my bed, and something scratched 3 times on my ceiling. I moved into the apartment because it was cheap, not suspiciously cheap. Just cheap enough that I didn't ask too many questions. The building was old, but clean. My unit was on the 5th floor, top floor. The first night, I heard footsteps above me. Slow footsteps, someone walking from one end of the apartment to the other. I assumed the building had another level. Maybe I had misunderstood the floor plan. But when I checked the hallway, there was nothing above me, just the roof. I mentioned it to the landlord. He laughed. "You're on the top floor." I laughed too, and forgot about it, until the footsteps returned. Every night, usually around 2 a.m., 4 or 5 slow steps, then silence. The pattern never changed. One night, I recorded it on my phone. The next morning, I played the recording. There was no sound, not even background noise, just silence. I thought maybe I was dreaming. Then things started moving. My kitchen cabinet would be open when I woke up. My bathroom door would be slightly ajar. Once, I came home and found my bedroom window unlocked. I blamed myself. Stress, exhaustion, forgetfulness. Then came the footsteps again. This time, they were directly above me. I stood in the middle of my bedroom and looked at the ceiling. Then silence. I waited. 3 scratches came from directly above my head. I left the apartment. I spent the night at a friend's house. The next morning, I called the landlord. He came over. I told him everything. He didn't laugh this time. He just stood quietly in my bedroom. Then he asked me, "Did you hear anything else?" I said no. He stared at the ceiling. Then he told me something about the building. Years earlier, there had been a small maintenance space above my apartment. It had been sealed after a fire. Nobody was supposed to have access to it. We contacted the building manager. They opened the access panel. Inside was a narrow crawl space. Dust covered everything, except for one section. There were footprints, fresh ones. They led toward my bedroom. The police searched the crawl space. Nobody was there, but they found a mattress, a blanket, empty food containers, and dozens of photographs. Every photograph showed my apartment. Some had been taken through my windows. Others showed me sleeping. The last photograph was different. It showed my bedroom ceiling, and written across the bottom were 4 words. "I can hear you." I moved out that week. I never learned who had been living above me. But a month later, I received a package at my new apartment. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed me sitting on my new bed. The photograph had been taken from above. Every night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed my own phone number. I never answered until the 7th night. When I finally picked up, I heard myself whisper, "Don't turn around." The first call happened on a Tuesday, 3:17 a.m. My phone rang once. I woke up and looked at the screen. My own number. I assumed it was some kind of glitch. I ignored it. The next night, it happened again. 3:17. Same number. I searched online for explanations. There were plenty. Spoofing, network errors, phone bugs, nothing supernatural. I felt better until the 3rd night. This time, the phone rang for almost a full minute. I didn't answer. On the 4th night, I turned my phone off. At 3:17 a.m., it rang. The screen was completely black. The phone wasn't even supposed to be powered on. I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I went to the service provider. They checked the device. Everything was normal. They told me it was probably an error. I wanted to believe them. Then the 5th night came. 3:17 a.m. The phone rang. I watched it from across the room. This time, a voicemail appeared. I didn't remember answering. The voicemail was 7 seconds long. I played it. At first there was only breathing. Then I heard my own voice. "Don't answer tomorrow." I stopped the recording. I didn't understand. The next night I stayed awake. 3:16. I watched the clock. 3:17. The phone rang. I didn't touch it. The ringing stopped. Then a message appeared. You should have listened. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall. The screen went black. Then the phone rang again. I was terrified, but curiosity won. I picked it up. Hello? Silence. Then I heard breathing. My breathing. Exactly the same rhythm. Then my own voice whispered, "Don't turn around." I froze. I was sitting on my bed. My bedroom door was closed. The room behind me was dark. I didn't move. My voice came through the phone again. "He's standing behind you." I couldn't breathe. Then another voice whispered through the phone. Not mine. "Turn around." I closed my eyes. The call ended. I sat there until sunrise. When I finally turned around, there was nothing. I checked the room. Closet empty. Bathroom empty. Under the bed empty. I almost laughed. Maybe I had finally lost my mind. Then I noticed something. My bedroom window was open. I always locked it. And on the floor beneath it was my phone. The phone I had been holding. I looked down at my hand. I was holding another phone. Same model, same case, same cracked screen. But when I unlocked it, there was only one contact saved. Me. I called the number. My bedroom phone started ringing. 3:17 a.m. I looked at the clock. It was 3:17. But outside my window, the sun was already rising. I answered the call. This time, the voice on the other end wasn't mine. It was my mother's. She died 9 years ago. She said only one thing: "You're not supposed to be there." The line went dead. The next morning, I left the apartment. I never went back. But there was one thing I couldn't explain. When I checked my phone records, the calls weren't coming from my number. They were coming from my apartment. The same apartment I had just left. I changed my number, moved to another city, bought a different phone. For almost a year, nothing happened. Then last night, my new phone rang. 3:17 a.m. I stared at the screen. The caller ID showed my name. I didn't answer. The ringing stopped. A message appeared. Just 4 words. "I know you moved." And that's when I realized something. The calls were never coming from my phone. They were coming from wherever I was.